Greetings, citizens of the world. For the last decade, average internet citizens have become increasingly fed up with the many major and minor injustices we face every day. They have become motivated to act, compelled to address the culprits head-on and expose the vast variety of criminal acts being committed without remorse. These skilled individuals have not sought to use their talents to attack your personal information or your credit card numbers. These individuals have used their skills to allow access to suppressed information, news, videos, and images. They have revealed names and addresses, shut down websites, and declared that they will no longer tolerate the massive extinction of what makes us free. The ability to destroy infrastructure or express dissent grants them freedom, but also comes with responsibility. With faith in the potential of humanity, they uphold an obligation to do something constructive with their abilities. It is there, in cyberspace, that democracy has become, for the first time, possible. We must keep this global forum uncensored and available to all. It is here that leaders are cultivated, not more followers. As activists, we observe and internalize the many tragedies that are a direct result of greed, corruption, and the lust for global domination. We have seen the erosion of the Constitution, the manipulation of law in favor of the elite to protect their selfish interests, as well as the persecution of our brothers and sisters for challenging that system. In exposing the lies, we also reveal universal truths. We invite all citizens of the world to rise up out of the cesspool of deception, misinformation, and oppression. We take the risk for the sake of humanity. We risk our freedom in its name, in the pursuit of peace, justice, and the liberation of the enslaved. The voice of determined resolution is ringing around the world. Our chorus will not be ignored. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Don't expect us. We are already here.
Hi everyone, and welcome once again to another segment of Rant Radio. We are broadcasting this week from Florida. This is our 7th segment, and today we will be talking all about Anonymous and the mystery behind the mask. Now, I want to start out with a brief history and the origins of Anonymous itself, so you guys can better understand a little bit about how this group or identity was formed. The group originated in 2003, and it was on an image board known as 4chan. So anonymous users developed a popularity with 4chan and several other sites where they could meet and have complete discretion as to what they say and what they wish to do. So they were a loosely affiliated hacktivist group coming from all different sorts of internet subcultures. And there's really no identity to any individual at all, but they all come with a cause, and they all come with a common purpose, and that is to expose all of the types of corruption and terrible atrocities that are being committed around the world. So some of the sites that they use, besides these image boards like 4chan, they also use associated wikis. They use Encyclopedia Dramatica, as well as several other forums. And there are IRC chat rooms being created all the time to ensure that Anons have privacy and that they can speak about what they want to speak about freely. And most recently, in 2008, just a few years ago, the tactic known as DDoS has been used most frequently since then. And for those of you who don't know what DDoS is, it's the distributed denial of service. So basically what this tactic is used for is to take down websites and to influence the business as usual on the internet. So what they do is they use a collaborative effort with lots of people contributing their resources, such as their computer, to overload a website with activity. And that's one way that they can deface a website as well. If they can hack into it, they can take over the page and insert their own links and their own URLs that give all kinds of interactive fun for the audience that links on. And this, once again, bombards the site and makes the site rendered useless. This is also a great way that they can infiltrate sites and pull up information that these institutions don't want you to see and don't want you to know. And this is where a lot of the email information that we get comes from. There's also a tactic known as doxing, and this is the public posting of private information of certain targets. So big CEOs, banksters, these are the types that have been subject to this kind of attack. And this is revealing of their personal information, such as where they live, their full names, their wives, their children, where they work, so on and so forth. CNN actually did acknowledge Anonymous more recently as one of the 3 major successors to WikiLeaks. And I'll be talking a little bit more about WikiLeaks later. Time magazine this year also named Anonymous one of the most influential groups in the world. So just over the last decade, since Anonymous's creation and birth on the internet, they have captivated audiences. And they have really perplexed the media, who has been struggling to put them inside of a box since they first started hearing about their activity. And they are definitely being influential. And I think that a lot of the institutions that they have been attacking are perplexed as to what to do about it. It's kind of hard to persecute somebody if you don't know who they are and you don't know where they're from. But it's not always the safest way. And that'll also address how many people have become subject to becoming victims and falling prey to a severe system that is very disproportionate in how they treat activists and hackers as a result of their activity and their impact on these businesses or on these government websites. So in Anonymous, there is no leadership. It's very similar to Occupy. There's no ranking, so everyone is free to be a leader and to work autonomously to do whatever they feel they want to do to express their views or their dissent and make a statement. There is no single means of communication either, so you can talk in your own IRC chat rooms, you can form yourself, you can log on to the many sites that Anonymous provides. So there's lots of ways to get involved and to see what's going on for yourself and to talk to anons. And anybody could be an anon, so you just never know. And there's different facets of Anonymous. So it's a really fascinating thing. What's happened is Anonymous has broken into subgroups. And as a form of an internet army, they have really taken over the internet as an opportunity to collaborate with other groups as well besides themselves. And one of the oldest groups, known as the People's Liberation Front, is as old as I am. It was created in 1985, and the alleged contributor and creator goes by Commander X. And they are part of a hacktivist group, and they have worked directly with Anon Ops, which is a subgroup of Anonymous. And over the years, they have performed DDoS attacks in Egypt, Iran, Syria, and Bahrain, and Tunisia. So they've really sunk their teeth into a global fight. And it's not just about the U.S. Even though that is where we seem to have Anonymous being popularized, this is actually a global fight that they're a part of. And they're not afraid to target any government worldwide that they disagree with and they feel is doing injustices to their people. So there have been comparisons to Anonymous's inner workings, similar to a NATO, which I don't know how much I like, that kind of comparison. But they do act as groups within subgroups. And the organization People's Liberation Front is a much more swift-acting organization. They tend to cut like a scalpel, was one of the comparisons that was given in my research. So they can opt in or opt out depending on what mission they want to be a part of with Anonymous. Whereas Anon Ops is much more meticulous, they're much more calculating, they work very slowly. But a lot of times, good things come to those who wait. And sometimes their time taken pays off because they finally get the results that they're looking for and they're able to do a little bit of the damage that they seek to get out those statements. So there's a little bit about DDoS attacks I want to talk about so you guys can kind of understand how exactly they pull this off. So what they do is they use something called a low orbit ion cannon. And this is like a network stress testing app. It's an app that anyone can download. And once you download it, you contribute your computer to a botnet. And that botnet is then directed at a target by the Anon ops. The Anon ops are very good at this stuff. And all they need is a bunch of computers doing this at once. And they can flood the network. So this is a way that people who want to be a part of Anonymous can do it. Now this does come with repercussions. And I'll be talking about some activists in particular who are being charged with some serious felonies and crimes and are looking at years and years in prison. So this is not something that just anyone can do, and there is no guarantee that any participation in Anonymous is safe. But it is important nonetheless to talk about it and so that we can better understand how they do what they do and why they do it. So why does Anonymous do what it does? They tend to be in a reactionary group. So if you see where the retaliation on Anonymous is, it's usually in response to an attack that is happening worldwide. So this may be the prosecution of the latest activist or hacktivist or both. This could be the blatant committing of genocide or blatant racism, blatant homophobia. And these are all actions that Anonymous tries to tie into the messaging. These are themes that are very important to a lot of the activists that are involved in Anonymous. So it is really important that they constantly keep up on current events and that they react the way they want to react, because freedom is important in all of this. And if they feel that they can't do what they want to do, then this isn't really worth fighting for. So these DDoS attacks, the taking down of websites, the spamming of sites, the hacking of emails, these are all different ways that Anonymous makes a point. So what does Anonymous stand for? There's a lot of different issues that Anonymous covers, and quite frankly, I don't know how they handle it all. It's very similar to the same paradigm that Occupy faces. And Anonymous and Occupy have merged since the creation of Occupy. So there has been an attempt to really attack a lot of different issues. But I think it's because Anons are individuals and that each of them has their own cause. Each of them has something that really speaks to them and something that they are passionate about. And I think that might be why we see such a variety in the statements that come from Anonymous. They really keep it very well-rounded. And so I'm going to start covering a few of those issues that Anonymous has been very open about. So the first one that Anonymous has been really adamant about, and that's really what put them on the map, was the attack on Scientology. So I'm going to go through Scientology really quick and give you a little bit of background so you guys can understand why Anonymous has such a big problem with this so-called religious organization. Now, Scientology has been around since about 1952, and it was created by a man named L. Ron Hubbard. This is a science fiction writer, and his book started out as a way to tie this idea and this belief system of spiritual liberation with alien invasion and the idea that aliens are actually humans and that human beings are trapped in their meat body and they are actually aliens from another world with past lives that have existed on extraterrestrial lands. So it's probably the most bizarre religion you will ever research. And the fact that it is based off of sci-fi novels blows my mind. And that alone, I would think, could aggravate just about anybody, especially because they parade around acting like a charitable organization. And they've got some very weird practices. So what Anonymous did in response to the Scientology organization was they started their own project called Project Chanology. And what they did basically was start a protest against the Church of Scientology. And over the years, they have hacked their websites, they've attacked Twitter handles, they've done all kinds of tactics to prove that they are not very approving of Scientology whatsoever. So here's a little bit more quick info about Scientology. Some of the things that they've come under fire for over the years include extortion, illegal medicine, privacy breaches, fraud, and violation of human rights. And this is a quote from L. Ron Hubbard, which is why this organization is so, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, so backwards to me. He says that the aims of Scientology are a civilization without insanity, without criminals and without war, where the able can prosper, and honest beings can have rights, where man is free to rise to greater heights. And he's a poet, I guess. So that's what he said. And that all sounds well and good. You can almost agree with him, and it can make it sound like Scientology is the group for you. But he died in 1987, and books keep getting released under his name. So he speaks from the grave time and time again. There are some people who have taken his place, and Scientology itself has actually broken off into different groups. There is the Religious Scientology Center. They are the nonprofit organization that administers all the trademark stuff and all the names and symbols and everything that they want their members to identify with. They basically revolve around this story about Xenu, and this is the extraterrestrial civilization that apparently came to Earth at some point. Oh, and by the way, these are referred to as space operas. So if you're not much on the nerdy front and you don't know anything about sci-fi, they're called space operas, which is similar to a soap opera involving aliens. It's a melodramatic space adventure. I don't know why people pray to this. But anywho, it teaches that people are immortal spiritual beings who have forgotten their nature. They are just lost. And this method of spiritual rehabilitation is used, this kind of counseling, which they call auditing. That is practiced to re-experience consciously these traumatic past events that are so painful for us. And this is to liberate us from being limited by its effects. Once again, kind of sounding good, but still a little weird. And there are courses that are available that you can take yourself if you become a member. Just make a donation. They've got billions now. So they describe themselves as studying and handling of spirit in relation to itself, others, and all life. The goal is to become certain of one's spiritual experience and relation to the Supreme Being, maybe God or whatever you call it. They claim that humans are immortal. So that is an interesting concept, considering L. Ron Hubbard apparently died, but he's still writing books. So maybe he is alive and well and immortal, and he just faked his own death. Maybe he got transported by the mothership. Maybe he's hanging out in Xenu. I don't really know. If you can track him down and talk to him, Anons, feel free. I'd love to have a conversation with him. But there's some weird things that start to happen. So when you sign a membership, you have to sign waivers to become a member of Scientology. There is virtually no other religious organization that requires you signing a waiver. That's a red flag to me right off the bat. Why do you need to sign a waiver? What is it that you're going to be doing that is potentially an endangerment to yourself? Is there something that they want you to be hush-hush about, perhaps? So they sign these lengthy legal contracts and waivers before they can engage in any of the services that Scientology provides. And these documents cover rights that are granted to Scientology members. And the followers also agree, for instance, to ignore any psychiatric recommendations from their doctor. They're told to ignore all of that because that's not the kind of medicine that they believe in. They believe that psychiatric issues are spiritual issues, but they've got some strange ways of working that psychiatric stuff out. So, for instance, if you decide to leave the Church of Scientology, watch out, because you just might get kidnapped. And this has been happening several different times. I have 2 cases that I wrote down, but I'm sure there's more. In 2007, a woman by Martina Bubil, possibly, might be getting that wrong. She was held for several weeks in Sardinia after being captured by 4 Scientologists. When she was finally released, she was covered in bug bites, over 100 of them, and what it looked like they were caused by was cockroaches. She was also extremely dehydrated and undernourished. So what it appears is that she was locked in a cell full of bugs and not given food and water. I don't know what kind of treatment this is for a former member of Scientology, but it sounds like flat-out torture, and this group should be brought up on charges for it. And that is one of the things that Anons have been trying to attack, is how manipulative and controlling this church is, and how they really have completely twisted what they claim to be about and what they actually practice, and the kinds of tactics that they use on their own members to spiritually liberate. It's all so bizarre, it's all crazy, but Tom Cruise is crazy about it. No surprise there. And speaking of Tom Cruise, that's actually how Anonymous got its start in attacking Scientology. There was a very controversial interview that happened with Tom Cruise and his affiliation with Scientology. And the Church of Scientology tried to remove the interview from the internet. And Anonymous was like, oh, no, no, no. We are not about censorship. You put that stuff back on or we'll continue to hack your websites. So that's a perfect example of the kind of retaliation that Anonymous used to really solidify where they stand with this issue. All this information should be available on the internet, and just because it's unfavorable to one organization does not mean that it should be removed or restricted from public view. They are about transparency to the fullest. And even if you think their tactics are a little bit extreme, they do get the message across, and they do lead to some things getting changed. So that interview with Tom Cruise is available on the internet, and feel free to research it. Tom Cruise is a wackadoo. He's hilarious to watch if you just want to laugh on a rainy Monday night. So another member that left the Church of Scientology, in 2008, she is the daughter of a Norwegian member of parliament, and she actually committed suicide after taking a personality test. This is one of the things that the Church of Scientology also requires. They require you to take a personality test. And something that was said in this personality test warranted her to decide that she was good for nothing, and she committed suicide. And she left behind a letter apologizing to her family that she was good for nothing. There was no sign of depression, no sign that she had any kind of mental instability, but suddenly out of nowhere, as a result of having this personality test, she winds up killing herself. It's just more bizarre stuff. And this doesn't even really scratch the surface. The Church of Scientology has committed tons of acts that should be prosecuted. And really, I could spend an entire segment just attacking their practices. But I want to get back to Anonymous in general. So please do some research on this, because these guys are big, they've got a lot of money, and they're getting a lot of influence. And they're crazy. And what they believe in is absolutely ridiculous. I feel like I could start a church just as easily. All I got to do is write a fancy space novel, and I can get members all over the world. Maybe I can convince Tom Cruise to leave Scientology and come to me. Who knows? But anywho, strange things, strange world. That's why we're all pissed. Back to Anonymous. One of the other things that Anonymous has attacked in the last decade is child pornography and internet predators. Now, they're in a great position, especially to attack internet predators. Because they have an anonymous aspect of them, they can go in as a different identity, and they can provoke or lead to the incrimination of these predators. And they managed to do this successfully in October of 2011 with a man named Chris Forkand. He's 53 years old, and because of Anonymous work, he was charged with child sexual and firearm charges. All these offenses as a result of Anonymous tracking him and going in and posing as a young girl or young boy and getting him to incriminate himself. They basically propositioned him, and in that way they were able to catch him red-handed and hand him over to the authorities. And they didn't stop with him. They also performed DDoS attacks on a site called Lolita City, which is a child pornography site. They were able to reveal 1,589 member names of this site, and they were able to reveal 100 gigabytes of child pornography and eventually lead to the site's demise. So this is another example of how they disagree with child pornography. They're not going to just say they disagree with pornography and child abuse and internet predators. They're actually going to go after them. So I think this is the aspect of the internet vigilante, the people who are not just sitting around saying they're angry, but they're actually doing something about it. And I have a lot of respect for people who take the time and have the guts to do these things. So that's one facet. And another facet, having talked about the Church of Scientology, there's also the Westboro Baptist Church aspect and the blatant use of homophobia to further their agenda. So Westboro Baptist Church became a target for Anonymous after they started picketing certain groups. They've attacked the military. They've attacked some of these school shootings, such as the most recent in Sandy Hook. And in response, Westboro sites were directly affected. Anonymous did not say that they had done the original hacking, but there are hackers out there who operate completely autonomously, and because they're anonymous, they tend to get looped in with Anonymous. And this is something that you'll see in media a lot when they portray Anonymous, is that any hacker anywhere in the world, if they do something without their identity revealed, they're considered anonymous. But there is a little bit of a difference, because there are spokespeople for Anonymous who will say, this wasn't anonymous. This was so-and-so. For instance, in this case with Westboro, the original attacks were by a fellow named Jester. But they do attack other government websites as well that are anti-gay. And one of the big ones that they went after is Uganda. And the Uganda government is right now trying to pass an anti-homosexuality bill. There's a huge homophobia problem in Uganda, and the gay citizens and the LGBT identifying citizens are suffering and being persecuted. And if this bill is passed, it could lead to the death of these individuals for their sexual preference. So Anonymous has pledged to continue to attack Uganda government websites until they abolish this bill and they start restoring equality. And their statement, and I quote, "Anonymous will continue to target Ugandan government websites and communications until the government of Uganda treats all people equally," end quote. So that is how they feel about this. They want equality for all. And when they see inequality happening, they go after it and they try to hit them where it hurts. They try to destabilize these websites so that they cannot conduct business as usual and get their attention. Another aspect of how Anonymous feels is about corruption. And of course, Occupy is all about exposing corruption, especially on Wall Street, with the banks and with corporations. And Anonymous has shown a lot of solidarity with that movement. And they have, in some circumstances, merged with Occupy. And they have encouraged us to remain peaceful, to remain nonviolent, and to avoid the tendency to become a movement of disorder. They know that it's important to be organized because they could never do what they do if they weren't organized and meticulous. So they have kind of been like a big brother for Occupy, and not the big brother that's staring at you from the towers. This is the big brother that's looking out for you and helping to guide us in having more of an understanding of how we can effectively attack our targets and get our message out and encourage more participants. So how have they attacked corruption? There are so many slews of actions that Anonymous has performed, but I'm just going to cover a few as an example. So some recent activity just over this weekend, which I was very super excited about, and I will say that Anonymous on record has not claimed responsibility for what happened, but there are hints that there may have been some involvement, but I am here to protect Anonymous, and I am not going to make any accusations as to whether or not they are responsible for what happened. But if you were watching the Super Bowl, you will have noticed that some of the lights mysteriously went out in the Superdome. The Super Bowl this year took place in New Orleans, and the Superdome was used as a holding place for victims of Hurricane Katrina. And what has been said about the reasons that the light went out just in a particular area of the Superdome speaks to a very interesting thing. And what has been said in various tweets from Anons is that there was a want to show the 1% just how dark it was for 5 days after Hurricane Katrina hit and people were locked down in the Superdome. So a very interesting thing to tie in, and this is years after this hurricane. I kind of love the fact that people are still embedding these ideas, and they're taking time, even years down the road, to continue to conjure up. They are almost like modern-day muckrakers. They don't want this shit to settle. They don't want this stuff to get pushed under the rug, and they continue to push the envelope and get people's attention. So that was one of the links that they made. Is the Superdome, it's New Orleans. Let's shut the lights out on these 1%ers and see how it feels to be in the dark. And while they had everybody's attention, they weren't done yet. They also doxed 4,000 bankers. And basically, once again, for the doxing, they exposed all of their personal information. So lots of information now available. And that's a lot of people. And these are bankers that have a lot to do with the World Bank in particular. So once again, in one day, they draw a link to a domestic problem with the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. They are once again paying a little homage to their dissent with the 1%, who continue to disregard what has happened in a lot of these situations and the poverty that it continues to run rampant in New Orleans as people try to patch their lives. But also attacking the bankers who are having a huge impact on the economic destruction that had happened in New Orleans, especially during the housing crisis. And we know that the bankers had so much to do with the collapse in 2008. So all with this one action of turning out the lights on the box seats in the Superdome, they were able to create an instant dialogue that tied so many elements so brilliantly together. And kudos to you, Anonymous. If it was you, I applaud you. I think it was great. If it wasn't you and it was just another hacker out there, kudos to you as well. So what else have they done? They doxed good old Tony Baloney. And if you guys don't know who Tony Baloney is, he was one of the guys, the officers, who notoriously pepper sprayed peaceful protesters. And all of his information was made public. And he was shamed online as a result of his abuse of his own power. Also worldwide, there have been several attacks. I mentioned Egypt earlier. Another DDoS attack that was made was in direct response to the police brutality on protesters in Egypt. And of course, we know, I have talked about Egypt in the past on this show. There's been so much civil unrest in Egypt over the new dictator that they voted into office and we're hoping to see change from. And it has been more of the same, and there is a huge disparity there as to whether the idea of rights applying to all or just to the Muslim agenda. So they attacked the government websites for that. Also in Israel, government websites were attacked to make a statement about how the Palestinians are being treated. And Anonymous said themselves, quote, the brutal, barbaric, despicable treatment of the Palestinian people, end quote, is why they attacked this website. And if you guys watch the show about Israel and Palestine, you can understand why Anonymous would have such a problem with how Israel has completely infiltrated, dominated, and slowly begun to exterminate Palestinian people and left them, you know, with no resources and fighting to survive. Also in Syria, government websites were hacked. This was in response to an internet blackout by Syrian authorities who were trying to quell dissent against the Syrian civil war that is happening. And of course, Anonymous doesn't like when the internet gets blacked out, so they went straight to the source and attacked the government to say that we do not agree with you censoring the internet just because there are citizens dissenting against that war. And then there's the affiliation with the Occupy movement. And they have done a great job at showing solidarity with us and encouraging us to join them in this fight, which is a global fight. And there's a lot that I could say about what Anonymous has done with Occupy, but I'm sure a lot of you have experienced it everything from the Camp Anonymous tents in Zuccotti to the Guy Fawkes masks that have been sprinkled in our marches. They're there, and they're watching, and they've got our backs. There has always been an emphasis on peace as well, and nonviolence, and that is something that I respect, and that's what a lot of occupiers have shown solidarity with. We do always respect a diversity of tactics, but I think what Anonymous has shown is that autonomy is the ultimate level of personal responsibility, and they don't take each other down with the ship. They do their own actions, they remain invisible, and a lot of times each other, whoever they are, these hackers on these sites, don't even know who's actually doing the hacking. So they are protecting themselves as they collaborate autonomously in this group. It's a really fascinating thing. So what else? There's always the surveillance. We know that our world is being surveilled. We know that everywhere we go, there are cameras everywhere. They are spying on our every thought, our every word, our every move. And this is all part of solidifying the police state and what I consider one of the steps to fascism. And one of the examples of how they've tried to attack this is by taking down government websites in the UK. They did this in April 2012 to protest the surveillance that was happening there. And their message on Twitter was, this is a hack for your draconian, I can't even say that word, the draconian, there we go, surveillance proposals. So they draw this link between the surveillance that is not actually just happening in the U.S., but is happening all over, where there are these false flags that are happening, and then all of a sudden the security gets beefed up. And Anonymous is good at breaching that security. So I think one of the goals of Anonymous is to always make them feel as uneasy as they try to make us feel. And it's the idea of returning that kind of uneasiness and making them shake in their boots a little bit, because they so badly want to instill fear into us that we will just fall right into submission and we will continue to obey. And Anonymous has done a great job at showing them that they can't just continue to use us and abuse us and spy on us, and that there are people that are actually spying on them. And they might not even know the access that Anonymous has. Anonymous has their own satellite access. So there is really no telling what their potential is to infiltrate. And I think that it's a great thing that we have infiltrators that are on our side to do the work that not all of us are capable or willing to do. So the other aspect we've been mentioning a lot is the internet censorship and the piracy issue, as well as whistleblowing. And this is where I'm going to break it down into the nitty-gritty. I'm going to start talking about the specific individuals who are facing years, if not life in prison, for trying to do these things that Anonymous does. And the attack on this worldwide censorship and the attack on file sharing that has been happening. So there's government websites worldwide. They're declaring their dissent for government extradition, as well as legislation, for instance, like SOPA and PIPA, which were legislative attempts at silencing aspects of the internet, censoring part of the internet, and criminalizing those who share files and post URLs. And Anonymous has done this by attacking the motion picture and recording trade associations, because it's in their best interest to try to regulate the internet, because they make money off of CD sales and file sales. So if it's all available and free on the internet, people might not be as motivated to go buy that CD. So that is their argument for wanting to protect these artists and these movie picture companies from losing revenue because their movies are bootlegs or their songs are illegally downloaded. However, the internet is an animal that you cannot tame, and I think that that is the point that Anonymous is trying to make, is that if people are going to buy your CD, they're going to buy your CD. But a lot of people can't even afford to spend that $20 on your piece of plastic. And I think for me especially, it has been great to have access to free material, because I can't afford to go to college, and I can't afford to have the music library that I'd love to have and the exposure to new music and artists. And I'm grateful that it's available. So Anonymous fights to have this file sharing available and free and without criminalization on the internet. But of course, there are a lot of organizations that are very concerned about their bottom line, and they do not want this stuff to be allowed to be shared. And now I'm going to get into the persecution of those who basically supposedly get caught. And this isn't just activists or hacktivists themselves. These are people who get branded as spokespeople for Anonymous, even if they don't say so themselves. And one of those individuals is Barrett Brown. And Barrett Brown in the media was claimed to be a spokesperson for Anonymous, but he never said publicly that he was. And in March 6th of 2012, he confirmed that the feds had raided his apartment after Sabu, who was another Anon and a founder of a site called Lulzsec, he basically betrayed Anonymous and started working with the feds. When he was caught, he started giving them information and continuing to go into chat rooms in order to entrap other activists in what they were doing. So in September of 2012, Barrett Brown is arrested for threatening an FBI agent. In December, he's indicted on 12 additional federal charges, and they stemmed all from a hack of a private intelligence company called Stratfor, which was a hack that happened a year prior. And all the data that was released from the hack was allegedly committed by Jeremy Hammond. And all of this information was shared on Lulzsec and then sent to WikiLeaks. So that was how Jeremy Hammond and Barrett Brown ended up behind bars. It's because Sabu had betrayed all of them and started going in and organizing with them and then sending all the information back to the feds. Now, no one has been convicted. No one has pled guilty. And right now, Brown is looking up to 15 years in federal prison. And he's basically looking to go to prison for sharing a URL link in one of these IRC channels. That's all that he did, and that's all that they can accuse him of right now, is sharing a URL link. 15 years in prison. And what I want you guys to understand is that there are rapists, there are murderers, there are thieves, and people that have committed worse crimes, in my view, than this, that have gotten out of jail in less time than this individual who is accused of sharing a URL. This is a perfect example of the disproportionate delivery of justice. This is a severe charge and a severe amount of time for something so small. And I think it's because we know that we pose as a huge threat to these companies' bottom line. We are a threat to their privacy and their continuous withholding of this information. And I have actually read a lot of the Stratfor emails myself on WikiLeaks. And it is incredible what you can learn. And that is the thing that they are trying to suppress the most, is the education. Because if everyone in the U.S. was a lot more educated, you'd see a hell of a lot more activists. I guarantee it. So Jeremy Hammond, he is looking for life in prison. That is his charge, which is extremely severe. He is one of 6 that are being indicted from countries ranging from the U.S., England, and Ireland. And all of the arrests were due mostly to Sabu's work, along with other FBI agents and this huge operation that went down to try to infiltrate Anonymous. Now here's where it gets really interesting and screwed up. The judge on Jeremy Hammond's case is a woman whose husband worked for a client of Stratfor's. So all of those emails and passwords were among some of the info leaked. This is a huge conflict of interest. And any justice system would have looked at this and said, this is too blatant of a conflict of interest, and this judge would have been completely disqualified from sitting on this case. But that's not what's happening. This judge is still the presiding judge over Jeremy's case, even though he has a direct link to the case and the supposed hack that Jeremy committed himself. So this is all levels of screwed up, and I feel so terrible for Jeremy Hammond and what he's possibly facing for what he allegedly did. And WikiLeaks creator Julian Assange is another one, and I've spoken about him before. He is still seeking refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. And I don't want people to forget about him, because this is a man who has spent his life, he has dedicated his life's work to exposing truths, to revealing corporate secrets, and to attacking the government institutions that are destroying the world and are oppressing people and are stopping progress from truly moving forward. So he's still there. And he has continued to speak out about Bradley Manning, who was, of course, the soldier who revealed and leaked information to WikiLeaks to expose the war crimes and the genocide that we were committing in Iraq and Afghanistan. And right now, Bradley Manning is approaching his 1,000th day in jail. His trial is just beginning, and there is no sign of when he will be let out. And his lawyer has continuously demanded that he be released on the count that he has been denied due process and that this is a direct violation of his constitutional rights. He shouldn't have been in jail for more than 100 days. And now we're going on about 1,000. My heart goes out to Bradley Manning, and I can't imagine what it must be like to be trapped. But I hope he knows how much solidarity we have with him on the outside. And Anonymous has continuously put out the word to show him support and to get educated about why he's there and about why our government is allowing him to be subjected to torture and to not be given the same constitutional rights as everyone else, especially when he has fought and bled for this country in the name of a war that he knew was unjust and that he could no longer support. And he could no longer stay silent when it is in fact part of his oath to bring war crimes to the attention of the public and to not stay silent when these crimes are being committed. He would not be a true patriot if he sat by and allowed these war crimes to go unpunished or not even acknowledged. So this is all examples of different activists. And another, most recently and most sadly, his name is Aaron Swartz. And Aaron Swartz has been an activist for a long time. He is a brave individual who contributed to a lot of the internet activity that has led to some of the major hacks that have happened. He committed suicide, and this was after he had already been charged with 13 felony counts for violating the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and that's the CFAA for short. And what he did allegedly was release files from an MIT database. And although MIT themselves did not press charges on Aaron, Aaron is still facing years and years in prison up until this point. So the sudden suicide of Aaron Swartz rocked Anonymous to its core, and this was part of the final straw for Anonymous. And this was one of the things that led to Anonymous's next tactic, which was Operation Last Resort. And most recently, one of the major hacks that Anonymous was able to pull off was the hack of the U.S. Sentencing Commission website. And they feel that this is a direct link that they are trying to make between the severity of the counts that were put against Aaron for what he did and the U.S. Sentencing Commission's practices and how they conduct what they do and how these sentencings come into being and how they determine how they sentence these kinds of charges. So basically, Anonymous is getting angry. And I don't think any of us are going to like Anonymous when they're angry. So this is just another operation that they've launched, and they will continue to reveal all sorts of really dirty secrets that they're going to make a lot of institutions upset. And they're attacking the government, people. You can't mess with the government. It's very, very difficult. And it's bad enough that Anonymous has been very open about the Illuminati and the New World Order. But even just our own government is so well protected that it's really hard to get all this information out there and to get away with hacking a government website. They have major security, so it takes a lot of skill and talent to be able to pull this off. It's not something that the average Joe can do.
So we got to give them a lot of respect for this. Now, in regards to Aaron Swartz, this is a tragedy, and the fact that he was pushed to that point, and that he felt that there really was no other way to say what he wanted to say and to remain free saying it. So if Aaron did take his own life, it was because he would rather die free than die behind bars and spend who knows how long in jail. And although I don't always agree in taking one's life, and a lot of people will view it as selfish, I admire his bravery, and I feel so bad for his family who has to live with the reality, but I think that they have been woken up to what has happened to our democracy, if it ever existed at all, and how severe the persecution is for those who try anything to stir up dissent and attack these institutions. So what I want to do next is read a quote from Aaron Swartz's girlfriend, and I think that her words speak so poignantly to this. So this is what she had to say. Her name is Taryn. She says, "I believe Aaron's death was caused by exhaustion, by fear, and by uncertainty. I believe Aaron's death was caused by a persecution and a prosecution that had already wound on for 2 years. What happened to our right to a speedy trial? That's a really good question. And had already drained all of his financial resources. So he went broke trying to fight with his lawyer. He went broke trying to plead not guilty and to go through this due process that every one of us is supposed to be granted." And she goes on to say, "I believe that Aaron's death was caused by a criminal justice system that prioritizes power over mercy, vengeance over justice, a system that punishes innocent people for trying to prove their innocence instead of accepting plea deals that mark them as criminals in perpetuity." This is a line for prosecutors to destroy the life of an innovator like Aaron in the pursuit of their own ambitions. And she also goes on to say, "If on January 10th, Steve Heyman and Carmen Ortiz at the Massachusetts U.S. Attorney's Office had called Aaron's lawyer and told them they'd realized their mistake and that they were dropping all the charges, or even that matter, that they were ready to offer a reasonable plea deal, that Aaron would not have committed suicide, and that if he had marked Aaron as a felon for the rest of his life, even that, if that plea deal had been what he'd been given, he still wouldn't have committed suicide." So the fact that we know from what Aaron's girlfriend is saying that it is because of the severity of his case and the acceptance of what he was facing that he decided to take this route, it just goes to show how screwed up our system is, and that justice is dead and due process doesn't exist. If you commit the right crime, you can forget about your constitutional rights. If they accuse you of certain things, you can forget about a speedy trial or due process. It just doesn't matter. And this is a selective persecution. This is not just any crime that gets such a severity. It would be one thing if we lived in a country that was under martial law and almost anything you said or do could get you locked up for years. We are still at a point where the feds are choosing who they want to persecute and who they don't. So that was her quote. And his death not only impacted her and her family and Anonymous themselves, but this death has also impacted elected officials. And I want to talk about one in particular named Zoe Lofgren. Now, she's a congressman who right now is fighting to pass what's known as Aaron's Law. Aaron's Law would explicitly exclude breaches of terms in service or user agreements as violations of the CFAA. And that's one of the problems right now, is that the lines are so blurred. There's such a broad spectrum of which you can get looped into this category for just posting a URL, for instance, and that this is a violation of the CFAA, which comes with all of these severe repercussions. She also makes clear
that changing one's MAC or IP address under this bill should not be in itself a violation. And this is the quote from Zoe herself. She says, "I see Aaron's law as common sense fixes that should be enacted to stop the kinds of abuse Aaron was subjected to from affecting others. I will be urging my colleagues in the House of Representatives to become co-sponsors. The chances of success will depend greatly on the degree of positive public engagement and support to change the law." And she says, as SOPA showed, when the internet speaks, the lawmakers listen. So she is somebody that we actually have on our side in this fight. And she is somebody that I think was very moved by what has happened to Aaron and absolutely outraged. And we need to support her in this fight. And we need to support Aaron's law. And I encourage you guys to get educated about Aaron's law because I think that this is a really important thing. I don't think we should let Aaron die in vain. I think that we need to try to take what he was trying to tell us and teach us to heart and to really show how severe this disproportionate treatment is that he received and that others have received and that others will probably receive in the future if we don't get this outdated legislation changed and updated to reflect more of a fair justice process. Even though we know it's corrupt, this is all we can do at this point, is try to make some headway so that these guys or gals can be spared from this kind of persecution. So what does Aaron's family have to say? They say, and I quote, "It was the product of a criminal justice system rife with intimidation and prosecutorial overreach." So what they feel now is that the justice system has overstepped its bounds and completely abused its power. And they have taken advantage of the loopholes in the system to really make an example out of these few. And it's absolutely sickening to me that any activist should have to resort to taking one's own life as their final way of making a statement and remaining free. So basically, he died right as the legal trouble was getting worse for him. So this is a combination of stress and worry and the acceptance of where he was at. And it was also revealed that his lawyer, whose name is also Aaron Good, he told prosecutors that Aaron was suicidal in his last few days. And what was the prosecutor's response to that? Put him in jail. He'll be safe there. So there you have it. There's really nothing I can say. When I read that part, I was really rendered speechless. I'm sorry, but jail is not the answer for anyone that's suicidal. I don't believe in a culture that incarcerates people that are downtrodden, that are depressed, that are considering taking one's life. I don't think that is the answer. And as someone myself who has struggled with depression all my life, the last thing I'd want somebody to tell me was that I would be safer in jail because of how I'm feeling. So, closing thoughts. I know this has been a long segment, and I wanted to do a tribute to Anonymous because I feel a personal affinity with what they've done. I have been fascinated and enamored with them since I first saw the Guy Fawkes mask depicted on a video. The image of the headless suit as a faceless organization, these voices in the dark. They're doing the impossible because they have realized that the only way to do the impossible is to remain invisible and to have no identity at all. And I think it's sad that our freedom of speech has been reduced to that, but I am glad nonetheless that there are brave, talented individuals out there who are using the internet as their free forum to express themselves and to make these bold statements. And whether or not you agree with their tactics, you have to respect the fact that they are fighting for all of us. And they need our support, they need our attention, and we should do our best to tweet them, to get the word out, to do our research and to be educated. And when Anonymous comes up in the media, pay close attention. Be wary of the way the media words talks about Anonymous. Make sure that you don't get sucked in to their web. Because one of the things that Anonymous fights is the mass bombarding of bad media and misinformation. So it's really important that we all take the time, like I've said again and again in my rants, that we educate ourselves and we try to get to the truth, and that we are not satisfied until we have a better grasp on the world around us. So Anonymous, once again, whoever you are and wherever you are, thank you for doing the work that you're doing. And thank you for having the courage to take action in the face of so much oppression and the threatening hold that the feds are trying to put on you. I want you guys to stay strong, stay vigilant, and stay fiery, because your anger encourages me and your anger inspires me. And the fact that you are drawn to motivate yourselves to that level is inspiring. So thank you again, Anonymous. And I will be watching you wherever you are. And I will always be expecting you to be right outside, right behind me, watching my back. And thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys learned a lot. I apologize about any complications earlier. The feds may be upset with us. Who knows? We like to be controversial, and we're going to keep it that way. So once again, guys, if you're not already following us, do follow us on Twitter at JAK_NLAUREN. Or now, thanks to our little internet guru, Jack, you can find us on #JNL. So all you have to do is research that hashtag, because he does all of that good stuff to make things easier on you. Definitely keep following us, and we'll see you again next week. The Occupy bus tour will be departing this week as well, so we will be filming our next segment in a new location. Hopefully by next week we will be in the Carolinas, and we will be reunited with our veggie bus, and from there we will be making the journey onward. So guys, continue to watch, and also I just want to mention really quick that we've got a lot of fun ideas in the works to expand our programming and give you guys some fun things to watch during the week. We also want to start streaming other streamers and start mirroring other things that are going on in the country. So definitely get in touch with us about any ideas you have about that. And thank you once again for watching. Thanks so much.